Welcome to Mining the Media, providing nuggets of news and cutting-edge questions and answers, minus the political blather. Here are your hosts, G.K. Allen and Dave Jeffers.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Mining the Media. I'm Dave Jeffers, the producer and co-host. That's G.K. Allen, our creator and co-host. And G.K. wanted to get together and bounce a few things out there into the atmosphere to say a few things that are on his mind, run a couple of things by me. I'm going to kind of listen and riff off what he says, but I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce the agenda or what the show's going to be about, and we'll just go from there. GK, it's all yours, buddy.
Yeah, I was just thinking and pondering and twiddling my thumbs. So some of this stuff will probably bite the dust. Some of this might turn me into the next, I don't know, clairvoyant, who knows? But in any event, these are just observations.
Who was Claire anyway? I always hear that name. But...
Yeah, Claire Trevor, I think it was actually.
Okay,
but yeah, good actress. But in any event, just some things have been bouncing around in my noggin, okay? And obviously, recently we had the scare with the hurricane/tropical storm Elsa. So I had some time just to ponder, okay? These are basically just the ponderings of an old geezer. So here we go. It really does bother me, and other people have talked about this. It's not an original thought, but we'll start with this one. I'm really sick and tired of seeing accusation equaling verdict.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a conservative, an accusation is the verdict. If it's a liberal or a progressive or a socialist, the accusation doesn't even exist. They don't acknowledge it.
Yeah, that
really, really bothers me. Additionally, with all this thing about critical race theory and, all white people are evil, are you telling me that a 30-year-old German or a 30-year-old Japanese man or woman are in any way responsible for World War II?
Very good point.
Because they're not. Okay, they're absolutely not. And what about the 600,000 people, most of them white, who fought a civil war to improve our nation and allow it? And I'm really tired of the race game, because an awful lot of people of all stripes were responsible for improving this nation over time. I wish you and I could interview Frederick Douglass, what he thinks about the world today. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. I would love to, now Abernathy. I would love to be able to speak to these people to get their reflections on what is going on right now. And it bothers me when someone thinks because I have white privilege, apparently. Hey, Sparky, my ancestors didn't even come close to owning slaves, because they didn't arrive into this country until the latter half of the 1800s, long after the Civil War. And they came here from Sweden, and they came here from the Netherlands. And if you go back far enough, I have ancestors that were French Huguenots, were being tortured and killed by Catholics in France. They got their asses out of France, went to England, and eventually the United States. Am I going to want reparations for what Catholics did to my Protestant ancestors? That's absurd. I would never even think that way. I'm just trying to make a point here. When does this nonsense end? And what about the people who make Black neighborhoods a living hell? It's not the Klan that's going into town and marching down Main Street and accidentally or deliberately killing the grandmother and the little grandkids on the front porch. It's not white people doing this. It's gangbangers earning their street cred. And I think it's time that everybody, regardless of your race or politics or religion, should be able to talk about what's right and what's wrong. And in the Black community today, Black people and white people who care, because most people are decent of any racial stripe, we need to be able to talk about crime rate, the illegitimate birth rate, lack of education on the part of so many young Black men. It's time for Blacks to look in the mirror and say, yes, whites have contributed over time to a lot of problems, no doubt about that. Slavery was not our shining moment. In 2021, the problems that most Black people are facing are created by thugs in their own community. We have to address the fact that if you look at the crime rate right now with the defund the police movement, New York City, which had with a liberal mayor like Bloomberg and a conservative mayor like Giuliani, had a very low murder rate. New York City used to be the safest big city in the Western Hemisphere. They didn't have many homicides. I've had family that's been in New York for years, 6 years of my life, a long time ago. My college years, most of my college years were there. Now it's a hellhole. We have to be able to say, this is where white people do it right and wrong. This is where Black people do it right, wrong. And Dave, we need a media that once again returns to being a media, because you know and I know that they really are nothing more than apologists. They're PR agents and the propaganda ministers. And I have come up with a new phrase for social media, because I don't think it's an accurate phrase. It actually has become socialist media. It's not social media, not even anti-social media anymore. It's socialist media.
Right.
So, folks, turn off the TV if you don't like NBC or MSNBC, and you don't have to watch that. And the fact is, if you just take 15 minutes 3 times a week and go to very good news sites that are alternatives to the old-fashioned news and the over-the-air ABCs and all that, you can find out more in 15 minutes going to 3 or 4 different sites in terms of politics, including some British sites like the Daily Mail, which covers American politics better than most American newspapers. The fact is that you don't need TV news anymore. You really, really don't. And don't rely on CBS and ABC because, frankly, they lie, they edit, they abuse. But now, here's where I'm going to, wait a minute now, I got to get a prompt. See this, Dave, Dollar Tree, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. We're getting a lot of, it's been in the news lately, UFOs and things related, right? And I know you've got military connections and that and the other thing. I have a theory. I'm going to sound like John Cleese now when you did the old Ann L group theory, which is mine. That these sightings are man-made and they are a very advanced form of optical illusions designed to throw people off. It's an ultra smart way of giving the appearance of something being there. And I don't know who's doing it, but wouldn't it be nice if we were doing it, creating this very convincing, I'm using the term optical illusion because I can't think of a better one. If someone else can think of a better one, fine. Wouldn't it be something, I'm not saying this is what it is. I'm just saying, as a contrarian, if you will, couldn't it be some ultra sophisticated form of creating an illusion, kind of like when you're going down the highway and it looks like there's waves coming off of the, steam coming off of the highway when you're going through the desert, or the illusion of water in the middle of the desert? Maybe we're doing something like that in the sky.
Well, if you've watched the History Channel's 2-season series on UFOs with Lou Elizondo on it, the evidence doesn't support that theory in a number of cases, mainly because of sound that was heard, physical effects that some of these, particularly Air Force special police officers in England who were affected by it. Also, Navy pilots who spotted them off of they're actually many of the sightings are around nuclear aircraft carriers. And many of these Navy pilots who spotted it were able to see ripples on the water. And so there's physical evidence that human technology does not exist that anybody knows of. And I cannot imagine, and there's, like I said, you really have to watch that series. It's on the History Channel. Go to history.com and scroll to the very bottom of the shows. It's called UFO Investigation, something like that.
Well, I'm suggesting it just to be a contrarian.
But I understand that. But and I'm not a
and I'm suggesting that some of it might actually be true where there are some deliberate, it seems to be there, but it's really not.
Well,
Kind of like a theatrical prop, but very
that could be. But I'm just telling you, based off of what I've watched on this show, and these are Navy pilots. These are people, military, many of them military people who cited this stuff,
right,
who dealt with this, who had high-level security clearances. Some of them who have put themselves at risk in their careers, coming up and testifying before Congress about this stuff in closed sessions. If I had not seen that show, I would be skeptical. But because of the evidence that that's out there, it's hard for me to go there with it.
Do you think it's of this world or someplace else?
We don't know. I mean,
what does your gut tell you? What do you think?
It's nothing that I've ever seen in my 40 years in the military and studying all kinds of conspiracies and just intel that I've had access to. The technology that's shown in the capabilities of these UFOs is nothing that I know of that has been invented by humans. I know we've played around with the stuff out in Area 51, but the propulsion, the anti-gravity abilities, the things that these things do are not things that anybody who's done anything with aeronautics or aviation has ever seen or can explain. And you really have to watch the show, particularly for folks who are skeptics about it, because it will test your skepticism. It will test it. Now, you will not walk away.
Have you ever seen a UFO?
I have not, but my mother and sister saw one in California, and there was about I think she said 5 or 6 cars. It's when you come off Interstate 5 going from North Interstate 5 in the Glenn County Woodland area, and you head west towards Clear Lake. I think that's Highway 20, but I don't think that's the right word. But anyway, there's a big flat area before you go through the mountain passes to get over to Lake County. It's a big flat area. And my sister and my mother were coming back from my grandmother's home, and they pulled over because they saw other cars, and they saw a pink object that was flying through the air just silently, and so they spotted one. I have never spotted one. But I've seen a lot of things that are technologically advanced, and the things that they show on this show are not these. No one can explain it. Now, do we know?
I saw one.
Huh?
I saw one. Mm-hmm.
Really?
In fact, the story made, I think it was the front page of the Miami Herald in the summer of 1969. My family had a place, North Miami Beach, not far from where the building collapsed, was down in Surfside. It was up in North Miami Beach, near Hallover Beach and Motel Row and all that. And this again, 1969, and it's at nighttime, and we were on the next to, it's one of these high-rise buildings, and we were just below the penthouse in terms of the floor where the apartment was. And I'm out there with a friend of mine from college that came down to visit me because we're on our summer break, and we're looking at the ocean because where the place was located, to our right was the Intercoastal, to the left was the Atlantic Ocean. So, at night. And we see sort of a cigar or hoagie or sub-shaped translucent something. And it's going from our left to our right, meaning from the north heading south. It didn't have any flashing lights or wings or anything. It was a translucent shape that seemed to have an edge to it, an ending to it.
That's not an uncommon description.
And it seemed to be, if I remember correctly at the time, going against the wind. The wind, as I remember it, and I could be wrong, it's a long time ago, seemed to be going against the wind because, as I remember it, the wind was coming from the southeast up toward the shore, and this was going against the southeast wind pattern. And in the Miami Herald the next morning, I think it was front page, there was an item about cars stopping on Collins Avenue and people at the motels and all over North Miami Beach wondering what the heck they saw. NASA said it was some kind of exhaust coming from some rockets that were fired. I remember it again. I'm not claiming this is a perfect memory on my part. I can still visualize how it looked. And I always found it a little bit funny that they said that because it didn't seem to be smoke or exhaust or anything like that. It was formed the same way as it was traveling and then eventually disappeared and off into the moonlight, so to speak. So I never claimed that I saw, aliens or anything like that. What I am claiming is I saw something that was odd and something that I don't think NASA explained properly. And this was sometime between July and August in the summer of 1969.
A lot of, I'm trying to find, it's like when I need to find something, I can never find it. It seems like my History Channel app just will not load. So History Channel, fix your app. I'm trying to find the name of the show, but it's Lou Elizondo. He's in the press a lot right now, as I did not realize because of what the Pentagon has done with the release of information on the UFO. He's calling it a misinformation campaign by them.
They don't want to panic the public or what?
Well, they don't have a choice. I mean, there's too much evidence now out there that's, you can't just say it didn't happen.
I wonder what the Chinese think. Do they think, or does their military think it's us? Does our military think it's them?
Here it is. I found it. History Channel. Well, it's interesting you say that because in this show, it's called Unidentified Inside America's UFO Investigation. It's on the History Channel. They have all the episodes there that you can watch. I don't think they charge either. So if you have, even online, you can watch it online at their website. Or if you have any of the Netflix or Amazon Prime, anything like that, you can watch it. But it's interesting you say that about the Chinese, because I think it was in season 2 when Lou Elizondo goes to Italy because the Italians are openly investigating it. The military is in charge of the investigation. They're not even trying to act like it. They consider it a national security issue because they actually had one get shot by one. They have physical evidence to show one got zapped.
Well, when you say one person or one plane?
No, a plane.
Okay.
A plane was attacked by a UFO. And they have evidence. And see, this is where the pieces were falling apart for the Department of Defense. They've been lying about what's happened since Roswell. Okay, Roswell. They've been lying about it since the 1940s. Now, do I believe there's a little Martian guy in Area 51? No, that's a stretch for me. All right. But there's too much. See, I believe in physical evidence. And physical evidence, it doesn't lie. When you go to the Creation Museum, theories are theories, evidence is evidence. When you go to the Creation Museum up in northern Kentucky, and you walk into the first exhibit, there's a big archaeological dig, and they got these, Disney style puppets. It's 2 archaeologists, and they're both there digging. And one's a creationist, one's an evolutionist. The creationist, and I never thought of this, and it just set the stage for the whole visit at the museum. The creationist says, the only difference between you and me is because we're looking at the same evidence, it's our theory, it's our
interpretation.
Yeah.
Or
well,
interpretation.
It's not just the interpretation, it's our
conclusion.
It's our starting point.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
It's our point of view. It's our worldview. We start with a point of view we start with a worldview. Now, my point of view when it comes to UFOs could be either or. I can be full on conspiracy theorist because I love that stuff, or I'm a skeptic because of my experience in the military. So I try to fall back on my experience in the military. And so when I approach evidence such as this, when it comes to threat, when it comes to national security, I need evidence. I mean, there's theory, there's speculation, but I'm always skeptical of that. I need some facts. I need some evidence. I need some data to look at so that I can maybe start. You can come to me with your theory, but absent of any evidence or data, it's all theory.
Well, let me ask you this, Dave. As it relates to evidence, is there anything personally, just, your sweet self, is there anything personally that you consider to be evidence?
That of what I've seen?
What you know, what you've heard, what you've seen, whatever, all sources, whatever you know, full body of your knowledge.
It would probably mainly be, it's all open source, so it's nothing that I've ever seen or anything I did, classified, or anything that I experienced while being deployed. Nothing like that exists. I'm just saying from my investigation and the investigation History Channel did, and just looking at different facts and reading different things.
So you're basically saying the civilian side of you.
Well, when you say civilian side, you mean
the everyday citizen. This is what you think.
Nothing I did in the military supports my thoughts.
Okay.
I can say that. Because I never came across it. It was never in my arena. I'm not an intel guy. I'm an aviator. I'm an air traffic controller. I'm an combat airspace manager. I've done, a lot of tactical type missions. I've been out in the desert a couple of times, the Mojave Desert. Does it count me seeing the space shuttle fly over? I saw that.
Say that again?
I said, does it count if I say I saw the space shuttle fly over when I was out in the Mojave Desert?
Well, that must have been cool.
Well, it was very cool because we were near an area called Goldstone, and there's deep listening stations there. And these satellite dishes are monstrous from miles away. And you know when the shuttle's coming around because you'll see it point up. And there's even times when that area is shut off because they have routes where you can fly around National Training Center. And I was working in, we call it the Death Star building, Star Wars building. And we're observer controllers. So I was actually a controller watching the big battle and talking live to aircraft. And he had a VIP on board. And when Goldstone's hot, you have to fly around it. And it takes you about 10, 15 miles out of your way. You can only get through there with special privilege. And NASA will never shut it off. But if you're willing to take the risk, or it's something, super high level, and they know about it, then you can coordinate that. But this one guy, I guess these guys didn't know what they're doing. It was a division commander. He's a 2-star, so he didn't have that much. He's just an infantry grunt. He doesn't know anything about necessarily what goes on out there. So they wanted permission to go through there. And I said, well, you need to know that Goldstone's hot right now. And I'm talking to Goldstone's on the phone. And I'm like, hey, the guy really wants to go through. And because he's got a general late for a meeting. He goes, that's fine, but ask them if they've already had all the children they want to have. So I literally said that over the radio to the helicopter pilot flying this 2-star general. And I said, well, according to the good folks at Goldstone, they're willing to approve it based off of your answer to this question. Have you all on board had all the children you want to have? There was about a 30-second pause. They keyed up and goes, Eagle Control, we're going to go ahead and go around. And please if you could you make a call and let them know that the general is going to be about 15 minutes late? And I said, I'll be glad to. So,
well, see, there, because of your background in the military, is an interesting story. I mean, I really appreciate you telling that. And in my background in the world of rock and roll to a great extent, before I ever got heavily into politics and that type of thing, I told you about the time I met David Bowie, right? I was interviewing Brian Eno in a hotel in New York City. He's the godfather of ambient music, co-founder of Roxy Music. He produced and worked with Bowie on Heroes and that era of Bowie. And after the interview was over, I left it was a really nice hotel. It was the Chelsea in New York, where all the British musicians used to stay back then, because the plumbing didn't work that well. But they loved it because it made it feel like they're at home. You know, the central heating wasn't that good. The plumbing didn't work that well. It had a certain kind of bohemian panache. So I'm leaving the room with Brian Eno. This was at the time that he had just finished collaborating with Bowie. He was producing the then semi-known bands Talking Heads and Devo. And upon leaving his room, knock on the door. Here's David Bowie. And I'm telling you, if anybody I've ever met in my life really may have been Ziggy Stardust, Space Alien, I didn't want to be, because I was there to see, and I didn't want to be some former slob. You know what I mean? I was there on my professional self.
Right.
So I just had a pleasant chat with him for a couple minutes and, left. But the fact is, because of some problem he had in his youth, some kind of health issue, he had 2 different colored eyes.
Right.
And I swear to God that light could shine through him. He was almost, he really did look like Ziggy Stardust.
That's actually a condition. There's he's actually a very famous baseball player. He's won the Cy Young a couple of times. He pitches for the Washington Nationals. His name is Max Scherzer. He actually has 2 different colored eyes. Yeah,
there was something Bowie experienced, real name David Jones, something he experienced in his youth, some odd medical condition that changed.
I think this one with Max he was born that way. But to go back to your original, I'm not sure how we got off track on this, but hey, this is what we do. We just vamp and riff. So
I just wanted, as you know, Dave, and I learned this to some extent from my father. There's a certain amount of contrarian in me. So if everybody says, go buy Hunga Bunga, it's the hottest stock in the stock market, I may not buy Hunga Bunga simply because of what everybody's saying.
Right.
My genetic makeup is I'm 1/3 curmudgeon and 1/3 contrarian and 1/3 conservative.